whenever we plant, especially in containers, we want to make sure that we use a nice, light, container-appropriate fill. This is a mix of some compost, peat moss, which is not sustainable. You could also use coir, peat moss, and vermiculite or perlite. That's a mineral that is hydrophilic. That means it loves water, so it'll hold water into your soil. And it's about a 1/3, 1/3, 1/3 mix. But the other thing that's important before you plant, you never want to plant anything in totally dry soil. You always want to have it be moistened. Whoops. So that it doesn't exactly hold together, but it's not bone dry. This is the best level of moistness to do your planting for your bulbs or for transplanting seedlings. So now we're put in our nice moistened soil mix. If you do want to grow directly in these containers, I would advise you to take a drill and drill a drainage hole in them. That would be easy. You could also put in a different pot and use it as what's called a cloche pot inside. So I have these little bulbs. These are muscaria bulbs. That's also known as a grape hyacinth. These were in the way of something I was planting this summer, and they have started to sprout, and you can see they have their little rootlets, but I think that they're going to be very sweet growing all together in a little clump in this container. And we'll be able to either put this container outside so that it chills throughout the winter, and then bring it in early in the winter to have indoor blooms, or we could probably even just leave it outside on our doorstep all winter long, and these little blossoms will pop up and bloom right where we want them, where we can see them. Have the little bulbs with their roots inside. We of course want to cover those up, and we can go ahead and cover them up. You can let some of the green pop up, but the green will push itself up as it goes, but you want to cover those up just a little bit. Okay, and there you have your little container. And what I'm going to do is I'm going to plant this up with a bunch of daffodil bulbs. Again, these were bulbs that were in the way of something I was planting this summer, and so they've been up and they've dried up, and they're now ready to go in the ground and grow again. Daffodils have a big history here at Morven, and they also have a modern history because we planted 5,000 of them last fall, and they came up and were gorgeous this spring. It was one of the best things of the spring of 2020. So here we have a few inches of soil in the bottom because we want there to be enough room for the roots to go down. Now with all of these bulbs, you always want to plant the pointy side up, and then this little flat part, that's where the roots will come out. The bulbs themselves are actually swollen stems, and what you want to do, you can put them right next to each other, you know, sort of crowd them in, so you'll have a riot of daffodils. You'll have a big bouquet coming up. So now we want to cover over the bulbs. Now normally, if we're planting these outside in the ground, we would want to plant each bulb at least 2 to 3 times as deep as it is tall. That's our rule of thumb for planting any bulb. But in a container, you can get away with it being a little bit more shallow. But we do want to cover these up with our soil mix. And then we also want to smooth that over. Like that. Okay. Now, they're all tucked in like this. I've left about 1 inch at the top because you always want to leave a little bit of room so you can water them, because they will need to be watered. What I would do next is I want to water them in. Even though our soil mix is moist, it's not completely moist, so we want to water it in. And now what you can do with this pot, you can take the entire pot and put it outside in a secure place. An ideal place is the window well next to your house, that for the basement windows. You can put it in the basement window well and cover it over with a good thick layer of fall leaves, which we all have in abundance coming up in the fall. And this will insulate it, but then these can also chill for 10 to 12 weeks. And you can dig them out of your window well and bring them inside around Valentine's Day. And you can have a pot of daffodils growing inside your house before anybody else is raising their daffodils outside. And these pots do have drainage holes in the bottom as well. If you don't have a window well, or if you don't want to put it there, you can also leave these out on your front porch, on your doorstep, or patio, wherever you have them. And these bulbs will chill over the winter, and they will emerge about the same time that the daffodils growing in the ground come out. But one thing, I don't really want to have just a plain pot of soil hanging out on my patio all fall. What I'm going to do is put a little bit of seed starting mix in the top of it, and I want to plant some fall crops on top of these. A little bit of lettuce seed or arugula would be wonderful to have growing on my patio right outside my kitchen door this fall, and I'll probably be able to have that all ready for Thanksgiving. Bulbs. You don't want anything that's going to have really deep roots, and you probably don't want to put perennials in. But things like lettuce, spinach actually I think I'll do this one in spinach. Spinach is a wonderful crop. I think I'm going to do it half in spinach and half in arugula. I'm going to put the spinach seeds around the outside, just sprinkling them in. These are a little bit close for spinach plants, but I'll be harvesting some baby spinach, and that will be thinning the plants out as they grow. So put the spinach in around the outside. And now I have arugula. Arugula is so easy to grow, and it's so delicious in the fall. It won't be as hot and spicy as it is in the heat of the summer. And arugula germinates, that is sprouts, very quickly. We'll see little heart-shaped leaves in just 4 days. To have these seeds grow, they are going to need to be in a sunny spot this fall, and they will need to be watered in. But these are the arugula seeds are tiny. They're like little, poppy seeds almost. And that's, again, this is a pretty dense spread of arugula, but they may do just fine. You can do spinach, you can do arugula. I have an all-star lettuce mix, which is wonderful. Also some of the Asian greens like tatsui and mache. Those are very small salad greens or for stir fries, and they'd be wonderful on top of this pot. And they all love fall weather. They do very well in the fall. By the way, the spinach, even if it drops below freezing and your spinach is up and growing, it's still going to be just fine. Spinach seems to last even down to 15 degrees Fahrenheit, that is. But there we go. And now I'll put it over in the sun in a nice sunny spot. So another way, especially if you would like to try to force your bulbs, and forcing isn't really the right word, it's encouraging or coaxing, tricking your bulbs into blooming early, is that you can plant them in containers and put them in your refrigerator. Because here in Princeton, it's not going to be 45 to 35 degrees consistently until the end of October at the earliest. So, but your refrigerator is. So what you can do, you can use one of these plastic pots that you probably got another plant in. Again, you want to fill it about halfway full with our same old soil mix. Some places online may mention that you can force bulbs without soil mix, and it's really not advisable, because what's happening while they're chilling is they're very slowly growing roots, and that's what you really need to bring your plant to life. So if you want to bring some in, say early for Christmas or for New Year's, I'll do a little pot of tulips. These are these purple and white tulips. And tulips have a big history here at Morven that you'll be hearing more about. But you can take a look, each tulip bulb, it's a little bit hard to see sometimes, but they have different sides. One side is flatter and the other side is rounder. The flat side, I think, looks much more beautiful if you put it on the outside of your pot. So flat side, outside. And the reason why I'm putting these flat sides out is because that's the side that the big tulip leaf comes up on. And if you have the leaves all coming into the center of the pot, it looks confused. But if they come up on the perimeter of it, they'll fall nicely over. And if you're planning this for, say, a table arrangement, I think it'll just look a lot nicer. And that's one of those tricks. So you can always look, there's one side that's flatter than the other. Again, we're planting the bulb pointy side up and this flat side down. So, planting them around. Oops. And it's fine to put these right next to each other. They can be really close like this. So the two in the middle, you know, I'm going to try to make their leaves fall toward, or maybe I'll put three in the middle, fall toward the outside. So there we go. So we have our bulbs all planted up. Now again, we want to cover these over with our soil mix. And then I would moisten it, you know, with our watering can. Not drenched, just keep it moist. And then this can go pretty much as is into one of those hydrator drawers that you have in your refrigerator, or if you have a spare refrigerator, you can fill the whole thing up with bulbs. Never put this in the freezer though. Even though we say that the bulbs need to be chilled, freezing them will kill them, and that won't work well. If you have a garage, or if a part of your basement really gets that cold, it probably doesn't, then you can also keep them cold that way. But if you wanted to have bulbs blooming by Christmas, you can count back 10 to 12 weeks of chilling, plus you want to add 2 to 3 weeks for blooming. So you probably need 15 weeks at least, maybe 16 or 17 is better if you wanted to have these blooming by New Year's. So you'd pretty much have to put these into the refrigerator right away, maybe even the beginning of October. One other thing about your refrigerator, often in our hydrators, we have some other vegetables rattling around. You should remove those. If you have apples or pears or many other fruits, they give off ethylene gas, and that causes ripening, and that will definitely mess with your bulbs. I don't think that onions and potatoes are particularly good for the bulbs either, but I'm not absolutely certain. I think it's better to have just your bulbs in the drawer if you can spare the room. So also in the spring or midwinter, whenever you want to bring these bulbs out of the refrigerator, they'll probably have some little spiky bulb growth points sticking up out of the soil. You should check them every couple weeks to make sure they're still a little bit moist in your refrigerator. Also, because the bulb growing tips are going to be coming up, you don't want to stack these in your refrigerator. You need to be careful that you leave room for them to grow. But when they come out, you can actually leave them in the plastic pot and just drop them into another container for them to grow this spring on your front doorstep, or of course a nicer container for inside your home. So here, now I'm going to show you how to make a layered planting, and this pot's too big for me to put in my refrigerator. I would just put this outside on my front porch or back on my back patio. Again, you can do this with terracotta pots. This one is resin, and as I already mentioned, I'm a big fan of resin pots because they're tough, and if children or dogs or sports equipment hit them, they aren't going to get nicked and chipped and cracked. So what you want to do, again, put a bunch of soil in. Oh, and the pot does have a drainage hole in the bottom. So we have our soil about, a full 6 inches plus below. Then what I'm going to take are hyacinth bulbs. Now, whenever you handle hyacinth bulbs, you probably want to wear gloves. Many people get contact dermatitis, that is an itch like poison ivy, from handling the hyacinth bulbs. Often, when you have a mixed batch of hyacinth bulbs, you can notice that some have the purple skin, some have the white skin. The purple skinned ones are probably the darker colors. They're going to be the blues and the purples. So I'm going to go ahead again. I'm going to put them in the pot, pointed side up, root side down, and I'm going to make a nice little array of these, like this. You could make a much denser one, but I think I only want a few of these growing. Now I'm going to put another layer of soil on top. Take this, cover it up. You'll want to cover them probably with at least an inch of soil. And now I'm going to layer in my tulips. And again, I personally love purple. And as I mentioned previously, tulips have a flat side and a curvy side, and I want to put the flat side pointing out. And I think I'm going to put these lighter color ones around the outside, and I'm going to put the darker ones inside. Now often, the bigger the bulb, the bigger your flower is going to be. So this variety with this darker color, I noticed these bulbs are a little bit bigger than the others. That's why I want to put them in the middle, because the bigger flowers are probably going to be a little bit taller, and I just think it'll make it look a little bit nicer. Now you would think that the bulbs underneath, the hyacinth, are going to have trouble coming up, but they find a way. They find their way up through the top. So there we have this. Now we're going to do another layer of soil, and I'm going to plant some daffodils. And now these are mixed daffodils, and you can see this is a relatively shallow planting of them. The daffodils are going to come up earlier than the tulips, and that's one reason why we put them up higher, even though they are pretty large bulbs. So I'm saving some of these bulbs because I have another container and I wanted to split the package between the two. But you could plant these in very densely if you want to just have a riot of color in your pot. So there we go. Now I'm going to cover this over again. Now you can see I'm planning this so that I want to make sure that we have an inch to hold water, but I'll have a surprise for you in a minute about that. So now I have crocus, and these are the little tiny crocus again. They're purple and white, my colors that I'm planting in today. And again with the crocus, you want that flat side down and the pointy side up. And I'm going to keep these kind of around the side. Every once in a while you get one where you can't quite tell, and you have to just really look, and you'll see that there is a pointy side. The point is where the stem came out, if that helps you remember which way goes up. There. Now I could plant this solid with crocus, but again, I only have this number of bulbs. You should plan ahead and order extra crocus bulbs from our Morven plant sale. So now I'm going to cover these over with just a thin layer of soil and give them a nice drink. This is a pretty big pot, and so I'm going to go ahead and give it a lot of water. I went ahead at my garden center and I went ahead and I got some of these decorative kale. And this is just about the right size. Oh, look how root bound these are. These you can just pull out. This looks brutal, but it's actually very good for the plants. Their roots should not be going around like this. You want to rip that out. And what I want to do is I'm just going to put that right in on top. And then I'm going to fill in the soil around the sides. Now, in the spring, when the bulbs are ready, when the crocus are ready to come up, you may want to go ahead and cut or lift these out and top off the pot with some more soil. Here I have my second pot because I'm going to put these on either side of the front door of my house. So I like things to look a little symmetrical, but this fall they're going to look a little bit different. So this time I put my crocus in the middle of the pot because I'm going to overplant it with some plants I think are going to be lovely this fall. And these are, you could actually put some edible kale. I could put regular kale in the middle, or Dusty Miller is a plant that's very cold tolerant and it'll grow and flourish. It's in the daisy family, so it might eventually get flowers, but it probably won't really show flowers. I am going to put the Dusty Miller in the middle because I like the silvery green in the fall. And this is one that I dug up out of my garden bed. That's why it looks a little bit wilty. Then around the sides, I'm going to put some violas. Violas are wonderfully cold tolerant, and they'll keep blooming all through the fall, and they probably won't come back in the spring, but they might. So I want to put happy violas around the side. You could even put in something also edible like parsley. Now parsley is a biennial. That means it would come back next year, but you wouldn't get very good leaves from it next year. But you could plant parsley in your pot and then have parsley all fall as well. But in this one I'm gonna stick to flowers. So, and also because I love having plants spill out the side, I'm going to put in this creeping Jenny. This is a plant that's is a perennial. Normally I'd say please avoid perennials, but it's going to mainly grow out. It's a perennial also that you'll probably want to keep in a pot because it does I believe it's Lysimachia. It tends to be very invasive in your garden if you do let it grow outside of the pot. And I just love having plants like this spill out. So we're going to have our Dusty Miller here as our centerpiece, maybe our thriller. We're going to have the Lysimachia Creeping Jenny as our spiller, and we're going to have Viola growing all around as our fillers. The first of our bulbs to pop up in the spring will be our crocus, probably maybe as early as late February, but probably March. And then we're going to get the daffodils up in maybe mid-April. The tulips that we chose are late blooming tulips, so they're going to be up at the end of April and into May, and so will the hyacinths come up then. So we're putting these in. Make our nice dense planting here. Lots and lots of violas. The violas actually are edible. You can also pick them off and put them in salads if you'd like. But they also make beautiful pressed flowers. Like, you can sign up for our Victorian pressed flower workshop, and Debbie will teach you all about that. I also, with kids, I like to take the flower and put it face down on a note card or a piece of stationery and another piece of paper over it and rub. Children love to make rubbings of them, and you can make a little print and can make birthday cards and holiday cards that way too. So just as a review, we planted first some little tiny grape hyacinth muscaria bulbs in this container. It's a square container, and I would advise that you drill a drainage hole in it. These can either be chilled, or because the bulbs were already sprouting, I'm thinking I'm just going to let it grow and see what happens. Then we planted a planter full of daffodils. This can either be stowed in your basement window well and covered over with a nice thick layer of leaves to chill, and then you can bring them inside to have blooms at Valentine's Day. You could, instead of daffodils, you could of course do that with red tulips, and then you'd have them ready for Valentine's Day. Or with this pot, I decided I'm going to leave it outside my house, and I put in some sterile soil, seed starting soil on top, and I planted emperor spinach and arugula seeds. So I'm going to have some nice fall salads out of that. Also, we planted up bulbs in a plastic pot. This is an example of something you can do to start chilling them right away in your refrigerator. Of course, you could also do this in a terracotta pot, and then when they are ready, after they've chilled for the duration of time that they need to grow, you can bring them out, and you could put, it won't quite fit, but you could, once the bulbs are growing, you can actually lift them out of the plastic pot and plant them into a lovely planter like this, which is also offered through our Morven plant sale. When you get this, I would advise drilling a drainage hole in the bottom or finding a pot that fits the interior of it. When you plant these, when you chill these in your refrigerator, make sure you don't stack them, and make sure you check them every week or two to make sure the soil is still moist, because even though they're below ground, they're growing and they're making their roots for the spring. Then we planted 2 containers for the front of my house, layered with bulbs. We planted hyacinth at the bottom, then we planted tulips, an array of purple tulips, and they will be blooming probably end of April, mid-May. And then above them, I have a layer of daffodils, which will probably be blooming by early April. On top of that, have a layer of crocus that'll probably be coming up in March. And then on top of them, covering them over for this fall, I put in this prefab set of ornamental kale that I bought at a garden center. And then I also here I put in an array of things that are from a garden center and also my garden bed. I put in Dusty Miller for my thriller and upright plant. I put in Creeping Jenny to spill out the sides, and I have the viola. They're a little tiny delicate pansy that are very cold tolerant. I put them in as the filler for our plants. And then this way you'll have a lovely fall container for your front porch, and you can be all ready for Halloween.